One of the core ideas that has shaped the way I think about marketing, and thus is a guiding principle of this podcast, comes from marketing guru Seth Godin. He once described good marketing as telling our stories in such a way that if people knew the truth about us, they would want to work with us. This should inform and shape our traditional marketing, but it can also allow us to think about the ministry of marketing without it needing to feel icky. If God has placed it on your heart or in the mission and vision of your church to develop and offer specific types of ministries or connect with specific communities, you do need to get the word out, even if only by word of mouth. We often describe this kind of communication as outreach, but it's also marketing. And when we do it well, we forge new relationships by revealing the truth of who we are. On this episode of the MyCom Church Marketing Podcast, we welcome Reverend Melissa Pisco to talk about how ministry that is intentionally inclusive of people with disabilities can offer a way to connect with those who are not yet a part of your church. Thank you to everybody for listening. My name is Dan Wunderlich. I'm a United Methodist pastor. And Melissa, Happy New Year. Happy 2024. And thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Dan. Happy New Year to you as well. It's good to be here.
Well, let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, your ministry, and its context.
I am an elder in the United Methodist Church, and I'm currently serving in the Gainesville and Archer area of Florida. I've been in ministry for over 20 years and have currently been at my current appointment for just about 10.
That's awesome. I also spent time in Gainesville. I love it up there. I'm not asking for a change of appointment, but I wouldn't be sad if we ended up back there someday.
It's a really neat place to be. Mm-hmm.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about your current church?
Sure. So I currently am serving, one of the churches I'm serving is Celebration United Methodist. That's the one that's in Gainesville.
That's right.
And it has a vision statement that indicates that it's going to be a community of healing and wholeness for folks. And it's really been a joy to walk with this congregation and its commitment to living into that. It has proven to be a safe space for my family and for many families, as it has understood its work specifically around providing space for those with disabilities in ministry and beyond. So.
And I know this is a very personal thing for you. And so I know in addition to serving as a local pastor at the two churches, you have also previously served as the chair of the disability ministry team for the Florida Conference. Can you share how and why this type of ministry is so personal and how it became so important for you?
Sure. And I honestly, when you were introducing the podcast and we're talking about the importance of our authentic story, that's really where this comes from. Prior to becoming a parent, I would have to say that my understanding of disability ministries simply was, do you have reserved parking spots and are your doors wide enough?
Yeah.
And my understanding of that has expanded quite a bit. I was blessed to become a mom about 15 years ago. And it didn't take too long before I realized that my son was not developing on track with other children his age, both physically and cognitively and behaviorally. And as I was living into that, I was also living into a situation where he was having difficulty in preschool and he was having difficulty in Sunday school. And so his behaviors were not kind of fitting the expected norm. And that was particularly hard for me in the church setting because I am someone who has always felt very strongly about making room for all people at the table. But it became clear to me that the table at the church was not necessarily a safe space for my son, who was being labeled as things like defiant or disobedient. And I knew that that wasn't the case. I knew he was struggling. And so my whole thought pattern around how is the church a safe space for people who are neurodivergent, and beyond. How is the church a safe space for this community? And it really became a deep passion of mine, because as I dug into that some more, and also as my own son's medical conditions began to extend out to autistic, epilepsy, developmental delay, just a whole bunch of things like that, it occurred to me how so much of what we do in the church is truly just not a safe space, whether it be
Yeah.
having flashing lights or hyperactive PowerPoint scenes, or just the way our Sunday school and worship settings are set up. And so I kind of made it my mission, so to speak, to have a space where folks could come and find safety. And in the midst of that, did my own research, because I knew I wasn't the only one, right? I
Mm.
knew that I couldn't be the only one. And so as I was looking into that some more, and kind of looking at how the church has been interacting with folks with disabilities, again, far beyond parking spaces and doors, I learned that there was a study that was done back in 2018, and I know that's somewhat dated, compared, that we're in 2023 now, or 2024. But in 2018, they had done this study that indicated that children with autism, who were autistic, were almost 2 times as likely to never attend church as
Mm.
neurotypical children. And that's a pretty staggering statistic, especially when we consider that the Department of Education indicates that about 13% of our children between the ages of 3 and 21 have some level of disability. It's a huge community that we are not not connecting with. We are able to, but we have to have some more intentionality around it. So that kind of launched me into this this whole area, and it has been really eye-opening to me, how the church has such an opportunity to create safe space for not only individuals with disabilities, but for their whole families.
Absolutely. And I mean, just hearing that stat, the likelihood that they're not in the church, and the percentage of families that experience those types of disabilities. I mean, I don't want this to sound, crass or opportunistic, but like, if you're a church that's looking to grow, this sounds to me like what you've shared is an incredibly like ripe opportunity to connect with people that probably um, just they want a safe space. And it doesn't really matter if they like view themselves as United Methodist or not. Like, the opportunity is there if you say like, this space is here for you, and if you've been looking for it. Certainly there are challenges that come with it, and we'll get into that. But would you agree that this is a huge untapped opportunity to make an impact for the kingdom?
I really had no idea how big it was going to be.
Hmm.
So when I started to connect with families, I began to hear stories uh, that nothing less than broke my heart. Everything from not feeling welcome or feeling judged, but even some of the theological ideas that were told to
Mm.
parents about why their children had disabilities was just
Yeah.
shocking to me. And so we have families that not only have experienced a less than welcoming environment, but also have been given some theology that is shaming and incredibly painful, and not graceful at all. And so it has been such a blessing to be able to share a different idea of God, and also of someone's belovedness, that
Yeah.
that our physical bodies do not determine our belovedness,
Mm.
and God's ability to use us for the kingdom. And so I have become again aware. I'm on a learning curve just with everybody else, so I'm continually learning. But the level of ableism that is in our theology and in our churches is staggering. The way we
Yeah.
talk about healing, the way we talk about illness, the way we talk about disability. And so not only the physical plant things that we have and do, and or the way we try to make things accessible or adaptable, but even theologically underpinning all of it, there is some dismantling of ableism that has to happen, some reteaching, I think, of theology that is life-giving and affirming and holy, and helps individuals understand belovedness as their essence, as their being, not whether or not they can see or walk or hear.
Absolutely, absolutely. The, maybe we can get into it in a little bit. Like, Jesus' interaction with people who have sought healing.
Hmm.
Jesus was not necessarily correcting a problem, right? He was
Right.
giving them something that they desired or something that they needed, but it wasn't anything that was holding them back from the love, grace, and mercy of God. Um, but like you said, it's real easy for us to take the physical infirmity in the story and make that symbolic of a problem rather than a
Exactly.
facet of
Well,
their life.
yeah, we see Jesus oftentimes, actually, the physical healing is to prove he had the authority to
Right.
forgive the sins.
Yep. Yep.
Right. And so here's something that has been really mind boggling for a lot of people when I talk with them about, when we talk about Jesus as resurrected, we tell the story of the hands having the marks of the nails and
Yeah.
his side having the piercing. So what if heaven isn't even just about, or what if wholeness is not about everything just disappearing,
Yeah.
right? That's not how we define wholeness. It's not even how we define life. And so there's some good unpacking to do around those stories and how we understand what healing and wholeness looks like.
Absolutely. Well, and I know, and I'll just confess myself, like I did probably more like Googling and preparation for this interview than I have in a little while, because I wanted to make sure that I was, using the proper terminology and being respectful. Just one of the barriers for a lot of well-meaning church leaders,
Hmm.
both clergy and lay, is just an anxiety around not
Yeah.
knowing how to talk about disability and
Hmm.
ministry for people with disabilities. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to offend
Right.
anybody. And so our plan is we'll just be really friendly and responsive and accommodating. And if it doesn't work, we'll say, well, we tried our best. But why
Hmm.
is it important for churches to be proactive and maybe just even start by helping us? How do we break the ice on these kinds of conversations and begin to educate ourselves and get comfortable with even having these conversations?
Yeah, there's so many good questions in that. I think one of the reasons we have to be proactive, and there's several ways I think we can enter into that question, is that if I have been to church and I know that my child or my family member, my adult family member, has experienced anything less than a loving welcome, it's going to be difficult for me to make my way back into it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't just be, if someone shows up, we're going to be nice to them. It really has to be, how are we going to make sure that anyone looking is going to know before they even get into our space that we are going to be a safe space? And that can be everything from what you do on social media, what you do on your website, and also the visuals that you use. And so, like, when you are using projections, do you include people who are using wheelchairs? Do you include people who have a visible disability that someone would be able to see, that if I'm watching you online, I can go, oh, look at that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
represented there in that PowerPoint. I'm represented in the presentation. There's somebody like me on the chancel area helping to lead worship, because we know people watch online a lot now before they actually come into your worship space.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that I hear oftentimes, and I know myself as a parent of a child with disabilities, when I walk into a space and I see certain things, it automatically tells me this is going to be a safe space. So if I see something like sensory blankets, or if I see something like headsets, or fidget toys, or, those sorts of, if I just see those things as soon as I walk in, I know, okay, they're thinking about me. They have put a chair around the table for my son. They
Mm.
want him here. They're expecting him and they're ready to go. But I know, like, even on our website, so we have our Sunday school teachers and are all trained by a group that's called CARD, which is the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. They are all over the state of Florida. I believe that they're even beyond Florida, but they will come and train your Sunday school staff for free. And they will help you with all kinds of resources, visual aids and everything. All of it is free.
Mm.
And so to be able to put on your website or on any marketing that you do, our Sunday school teachers have all been trained by CARD. If your family is anywhere in the autistic world, you probably know who CARD is. And that just
Mm.
right there and then says, this is somebody who's they're making a place. And so we have to, I think, find ways of getting our story out there, to let folks know we're not just hoping you'll be here. We are preparing for you, and we have prepared for you. We have made sure that not only can you get through our doors, but that when you do come, if your child goes under the table, that's going to be okay too.
Yeah.
So it's just it's so important, because unfortunately there has been, um, whether we want to use the word trauma, or there has been some negative experience.
Hmm.
We all know it's really difficult to, especially when it comes to our children and our vulnerable adults.
Yeah.
I can tell you as a parent that in this world, you feel like you have to fight for everything for your kid to be seen and heard, be it at
Yeah.
school or where else. The last place that you want to have to do that is church. You want to be able to go and just be loved, and not have to fight for a space to be seen and heard. And so, um, and along those lines, I think, along with the question that you were asking, what can we do?
Yeah.
And that sometimes we're hesitant. I think the best thing we can do when we see someone come in is, yes, offer them the same welcome that we would offer anybody else, hopefully, but also to say, how can we help your spouse? How can we help your child? How can we help your parent um, have the best possible worship experience here? What do they need? Because you may have heard the saying, if you've met one person who's autistic, then you've met one person who's autistic.
Yeah.
Everybody's a little bit different, right? And
Yeah.
so my son and his needs might be very different than another child. And so, but as a parent, if you ask me that, oh my gosh, you are making me so happy, because you're giving me an opportunity, to say what's going to help him feel loved and welcomed. Then, of course, there's the responsibility of following through on that. So if they say, well,
Sure.
visual timers really will help him with transitions, then, either say we can get one, or do you have one that you want to bring with you from home that we could keep here, or what have you. But I think understanding that we are coming alongside families.
Mm.
And again, this is not only, I speak about children a lot because that's my personal experience, but this is true for our church members who have a partner that is beginning with dementia,
Yeah.
or anything for that matter. Someone who's coming in that's using a walker, or how do we help you? Where do we come alongside to make this a loving space for you? And we have people that when they come in, they know there will be rows where chairs are not there specifically, so walkers and wheelchairs can easily get in without us having to, move anything. It's already there waiting, and so it's stuff like that becomes really important. But I think, I know my son has disabilities. So you talking about it, so to speak, or not talking about it, but asking about it is not going to be a shocker to me. It's going to be helpful. Talking about it behind my back, not helpful. But
Yeah.
coming straight up and saying, we want your son to have the best experience in Sunday school. How can we do that? And boy, that's life-giving.
And that's really helpful at that permission to ask, because I think sometimes we're like,
Mhm.
well, I don't want to single them out or make them feel like they're being put aside. But if the spirit behind it, and obviously how you ask also matters,
Right,
but
right.
asking how can we make this the best possible experience. And then let me ask you too, because one of my fears is that one of the requests will be something that we cannot pull off in the time between you walking in the door and worship starting. How would you as a parent feel if they said, well, we can't do that today, but let's figure out how to do it for the future? Is that an acceptable response, as long as it's not like feeling like you're being blown off?
Yeah, no, I think that that's really acceptable, and even to say, what could we do today?
Mm,
And so what will be helpful today? And and again, working with, but no, I think especially if there's something very specific or very unique, then I as a parent wouldn't necessarily expect you to have
mm.
that
Yeah.
available. And honestly, as a parent, I bring a lot of things with me
Mm,
when I
yeah.
go to places that are new. I just automatically bring these things with me. They're either in my car all the time or in a backpack with me. And so a lot of times folks will have it, but they also just need to know it's okay to pull them out or,
Yeah.
to use them. And I think that uh, having, so one of the things that I get pretty passionate about is the idea of ministry with and not for.
Mm,
So there are some things that we do for people, like we have the headsets, or we have spaces available, tables set up for people who need that for extra stability. But it's also understanding that the folk that are coming have something that God has placed in them that helps the body of Christ be more fully the body of Christ with them present.
yeah.
And so there's an offering that they bring. And so even to know, does this person like to sing? Does this person like to read? Is this person really good at putting things together? Like, what is the gift that they bring? And making sure that anytime that we're having those conversations with the church in general, that we are including um, our friends with disabilities in that conversation. Everybody has
Absolutely.
something to bring. Everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, and allowing them to serve, finding a way for them to serve, and not just
Right.
saying, "Well, your presence is enough." It's like, no, like we're here to be engaged. And with the United Methodist Church, we have a unique connection to justice work for people with disabilities. The ADA, the
Hmm.
Americans with Disabilities Act, was literally written inside the United Methodist building there on Capitol
Hmm.
Hill. But perhaps ironically, religious institutions like churches are exempt from this legislation. We don't
Yeah.
have to follow most of it.
Right.
But obviously, in the spirit of love for neighbor, and wanting people to be included, and trying to be proactive, was he talked about. You mentioned CARD, which, thank you, that is such an incredible resource. Like, what else is out there, either from the United Methodist Church, or what might be available in the local conferences, that can help us evaluate our facilities and our ministries, and what can help us make maybe some of those really just easy and obvious changes that we just don't see because we're not thinking that way.
Right. Right. Um, so so in our tribe in the United Methodist Church, we are supposed to have teams in our local churches that are looking at this very thing. And so there's actually a disability audit that is available in Florida. You can find that right on our conference website. Our conference website has a link to the Disability Ministries team. And on that website, you'll find information about worship ideas, children ministry ideas. There are whole studies about this idea that we talked about, ableism, and the theology of it, how to break that down, and to help congregations have conversations with that. So tons of resources on the conference website. But as a denomination, there's also the Disability Ministries uh, website that is available. I find that a lot of churches, or at least at the larger denomination level, are beginning to have more resources available.
Mm,
But they're out there. As you mentioned, you Googled a little bit before you met today with me, and
yeah.
And there's a lot there. But the other thing I would suggest is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so most of your schools have ESE departments, or your districts have ESE departments. And once you kind of break into this community, you'll find that people are usually more than eager to get out and to teach and to help. So I would recommend reaching out to, if you're in a community, reach out to the school and say, who do you use? Who do you have? Whether it be occupational therapists or physical therapists, speech therapists, folks that work with, behavioral or neurodivergence, and invite them to come and talk with your leadership. That more often than not, that is free. These things are all going to be free. I think one of the things that I hear a lot when I go out is, oh, it must be so expensive. And clearly, I'm not going to pretend like it is not expensive. It is expensive to do building renovations, although there are grants available as well. So I just want to throw that out there, that if you are wanting to make your buildings more accessible, there are grants available. And if you are in the United Methodist Church, there are definitely grants available for that, to help you make your churches more accessible, because a lot of our churches, the chancel area, for example, isn't. And so, so this is an important thing to look into. But there are so many free things that you can do, or if they're not free, they're certainly not very expensive. And so, and you don't have to do it all at once. I would say just start somewhere. Just start somewhere. So even if you just, again, start using some of those visuals, or get a teacher training in, or put together a couple of fidget bags, or do a disability awareness Sunday. We just had that in Florida last month. So to begin to raise awareness around it. But just start. And that would be the best thing that I would say. Just start somewhere.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier those things like the sensory blanket and the fidget toys. Can you talk a little bit about some of those things that you can just have on hand? That obviously serves a specific type of disability, but just what are some of the small, simple things that we could keep on hand that
Sure.
that honestly, like that might make all the difference in the world between a family feeling welcome and not.
Right. So visual timers, I think, are really great. And so there are two different kinds of visual timers. There's like a countdown clock, which is what a lot of us are used to. But I find that the ones that are more like a color coded, so the color, it's hard to describe it. It's easier to show it. But if you put in a visual timer and it shows, and you can, okay, so here too, they can be on your cell phone. So if you have a cell phone, you can get an app that's free. That's a visual timer. And all it does is it shows, like, if it's 5 minutes to a transition, if you're going to transition in 5 minutes, you can put this visual timer on and the color just begins to fade away. So a child who might not understand how to count backwards can see the color going away and can get a sense of how much longer is left. So visual timers, and again, you can do that right on your phone. You don't have to have a big deal with that. That's a great thing. We also have cards that are available, emotional cards. So if a child is feeling overstimulated or just anxious for any reason and is unable to articulate using words how they're feeling, they can point to a picture like, I'm hungry, or I need to go to the bathroom, or I'm thirsty, I'm sad. And so we have these cards that are laminated, so you only have to do it once, and then they can reuse them every single week. We put in our Sunday school and in our bathrooms and just around the property kind of an order. So if a child comes into Sunday school, they can say, okay, the first thing they're going to see a chart, and it's going to have pictures and words. It's going to be like, we're going to sing, we're going to pray, we're going to have story time, we're going to do a craft, or what have you. And so that you can kind of point to them and say, here's where we are. And if a child's like, well, I really, may not be interested in one thing, you're like, but this is what's coming next. And you know what we know is that when we do these things for children with disabilities, we actually are making it even a better learning environment for neurotypical kids. So, when we talk about folks that need an understanding of structure. So again, we're talking about anxiety or fear, having kind of like this map in front of us about what we can expect. I'm in this new building. I don't know it. I've never been to church before. I don't know what all these things are. We
Yeah.
use a lot of metaphors in church. Like we talk about things like the blood of Christ, or we talk about fill
Yeah.
my cup. I remember I was doing a message when we first started this ministry, and I was doing a message and I talked about, in a prayer time, fill my cup. And this young boy just straight in the middle of my prayer was like, Pastor Melissa. And I'm like, what? He's like, I don't have a cup. And I'm like, yeah, okay, good point. And so, uh, even learning how to discipline ourselves around our language also will be very, very helpful. And I would say be willing to be interrupted, because, that happens all the time too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what that means. Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
It's so fun. I can imagine there's some congregations that would love to give a timer to their preacher and be like, this is we're done at this point. When the
yeah, you're
color's
done.
gone.
Right. You're done. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. Some of these structure. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was reading this week that there are kind of like three major things that get in the way in churches of us being accessible. One of them we've talked about a little bit is like program. The other is kind of what we're talking about now, like communication, the language we use, how we use language. And then the third one, and I do think this is a big one, and it can be an elephant in the room that we just need to name. The third one is attitude. So I think that in our churches, oftentimes there is this expectation of we sit silently, it's a reverent place, etc. So we had a young adult. I think they were about 23 or 24. That came in with their family, and I'd never seen them before. They sat in the back, and the young adult, every time a song stopped, just started screaming out loud, and I could see the anxiety on the mom just kick right up. And I was very grateful because this is who we are as a church. 3 of my church members immediately walked over to offer comfort and support, and like, it's okay, to reassure her it's okay. Like, this is okay that your child is upset. And what we realized is that she was upset because she was really enjoying the music.
Yeah.
And so we put a little bit of music on in the background, really softly. It was towards the end of the service that we kind of put all those pieces together. And it was wonderful. She just started smiling. But, I can say from my own personal experience, the glares, the clearing of throats, the look over the shoulders at the person who's making all the noise. We think we're being discreet, but we're not. And, and we feel it. And so you and I and others, we can talk about timers. We can talk about strobe lights. We can talk about all the programs that we could do. But ultimately, too, we also have to figure out how to let go of this idea that somehow a child or an adult has to behave a particular way. And I'm not, and that's going to be different for every congregation, but like we have kids that sit under the table. That's okay. We have some kids that we know may walk right up in the middle of church, and I might be preaching and I just kind of pick that little one up. And sometimes I hold it, or sometimes mom will come up and I'll pass the child back to mom, and it's not a big deal. It's okay.
Yeah.
And the church knows that that's going to be okay, and everyone knows that's going to be okay. And so, and like I said, this other example was mid-20s, young adult, nonverbal, but made a lot of oral sounds during church.
Yeah.
And just everybody being like, yeah, okay, that's okay. She's worshiping, right? That's what she's doing right now. She's making a joyful noise, and it's all good. So attitude, program, and communication, those are all 3 areas that we need to work on, at the same time.
Well, and part of why I also wanted to bring you on, our podcast is because there may be churches out there that are either already doing some of these things, or they might be inspired to start these things, and in a couple of months they come to discover, wow, our church is actually really passionate about this. You
Mm-hmm.
all have taken yet another step at Celebration in Gainesville with the building of a very special playground.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that I honestly did not know existed until I read about it and heard what you all were doing. And so just to sort of cast the vision for churches or communities that might like get really excited about this, and they have buy-in, this is, it's a significant step, but this is another step you could take down the road. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your playground?
Yeah, here again, I had no idea. um, we had a traditional church playground, like a thing you might get at Lowe's or something,
Yeah.
and it rotted, and we had to do a new playground. And so we were like, well, if we're going to do that, let's line it up with our vision. And so we decided that we were going to do this playground, and we also decided that we would build a playground that every child could get on every piece and play side by side. We had to have some conversation about that, and we did as a leadership, because they were like, "Well, we want to, have a slide or something," and we decided not to do that. So we don't have anything that requires climbing, so to speak, or climbing that would require more than an easy transition from a wheelchair on. We have a merry-go-round that is flat to the ground that two wheelchairs can fit on alongside children who are standing. We've got a swing set that has 3 different models of swings on it, so that, again, children of all abilities and all sizes can be able to play. And then, of course, there's always the special flooring that is there for safety and what
Yeah.
have you. And we're getting ready to build phase 2, which is going to have like a little bit of a racetrack so that kids can ride a bike or use their wheelchair or run and play side by side. It is side by side play is what we are committed to, side by side play. So it's not, well, here's the playground for typically developing children, and here's a couple pieces over on the
Yeah.
side. We
Yeah.
wanted that full inclusion, and so that's what we've committed to. We discovered that sometimes playgrounds say we're inclusive, but when we get there, we realize, well, no, in fact they're not. The children might be able to roll around, but they can't get on anything. They can't play with anything. And so we were really committed to that. I do want to say, for full disclosure, this is not an inexpensive venture.
Right. Yeah.
The playground is much more expensive, which is a whole justice issue if you want to ask me about that. But it is a lot more expensive. But let me tell you a couple stories. We built this playground. And in my mind, I'm thinking it's for the kids, right? And we had a mom come who uses a wheelchair. And her daughter at the time was 9 years old. And her daughter, got onto the swing. The mom came up to me, tears down her face, saying, "I've never been able to push my daughter on a swing before." Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think about like, as soon as my little one could get on a swing, I loved pushing him on a swing. And this mom had never been able to get near a swing to be able to push her daughter. And so I realized, like, it is so much bigger than even what we think. And so we have a sandbox, but the sandbox is raised up. And so we hear stories from parents who have children, one in a wheelchair, one uses a wheelchair, one doesn't, and they're both playing in the sandbox together for the first time ever, because most sandboxes are on the ground.
Right.
And so so these are the things that I still get goosebumps. I'm telling you these stories, and I'm covered in goosebumps, because if it only does it for one family, it's so worth it. I think, and we have seen the playground. We talk about outreach, we talk about witness. The playground speaks for itself, and the stories I could tell about families that come and feel welcome just because again, their children can play and be safe, um, and siblings can play together for the first time. This was another thing I can tell you as a parent. A lot of playgrounds are really big and really overstimulating and
Yeah.
overwhelming because there's like so many kids there. And so I kind of like to be able to tell people our playground is kind of quiet and it's a little bit removed from other playgrounds. It doesn't get 200 kids on it, but quite frankly, we don't necessarily want 200 kids on it.
Yeah.
It is perfect for our children that get overstimulated or are elope, and now we don't have to worry about them being unsafe because it's contained or what have you. So we're still working on finalizing our containment, so I don't want to give a misrepresentation
Sure.
on
Yeah.
that. But I think if you are, because I told you we're getting ready to build phase 2, and we will fully enclose it at that point. But these are things that you make a decision about that help a parent go, I don't have to know the 3 different exits. My child who might be a runner, I can just sit here and know that they're safe because there's no way for them to get out except going by me at this entrance or what
Right.
have you. So um, it's life-giving.
Mm. Well, like we said, this is a church marketing podcast. And so, I think we have firmly established your heart for this kind of ministry, the way in which this ministry can have a deep impact on the kingdom, and the kind of investments that churches can make, either small or large.
Hmm.
So when we start or desire to get the word out and to tell the story, do you have any tips for our church communicators for how to tell this story, how to incorporate things? You mentioned things like just putting in like our Sunday school team is card certified or trained or whatever,
Hmm.
putting some things on our website. Um, how do we feature things on social media? I in my research, I found a guideline for journalists on how to talk about people with disabilities. And I think that'd be super helpful for a church communications person, because it's basically like avoid a lot of the tropes, a lot of the look at this
Right,
person, they're overcoming their disability, or even this person
right,
is loved, or, there's a way in which we are well meaning, but it comes
right.
across really poorly. What are some ways that you all tell your story? How do you get the word out? And or what are some things to maybe avoid?
Yeah, I really want to emphasize what you've just said around that language. That is so important. I remember as a parent, I remember I used to use the term special needs, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, but he really actually doesn't have special needs. He has the
Mm.
same exact needs as everybody else. He needs to
Yeah.
be loved, he needs to be safe, he needs to be cared for. He doesn't have special needs. He does have disabilities. And what that revealed to me, my hesitancy in even using the word disability, was just how much there's a stigma around disability. And so anything we can do to help that, I think is really important. And I remember even in the conference, when we were relaunching the team, there was an individual who was like, well, let's call us the disability, like to put a capital A on the ability. And I'm like, I think it's really important that we ask people in the disability community what their preference is.
Yeah.
And so, and this has been a learning thing. So right now, as my son is getting older, I try to talk with autistic adults. I'm like, talk to me about what do I need to know as a mom of a young man who's about to, be moving into a young adulthood. I don't have that answer. You do. So teach me. And I think that the church needs to position themselves and please don't pretend like we know it all. We don't.
Yeah.
And so this is again not this is the ministry with, and so going in with a humble heart, a spirit of learning and connecting with people and saying, what do I need to know? I wonder what you could teach me is such an important thing. So I would say that, especially as it pertains to language and how people prefer to be referred to. Um, I think the other thing for marketing that has been really helpful for us is, churches talk about tabling events. I mean, I don't know if everybody does that, but that's something we do. And when we table, we try really hard to we go to events where we know the disabled community will be.
Mm.
And we have never been turned away. And so when we go and we bring our information, and we specifically bring our information because we do a respite ministry, we bring in information about that. We bring information about our training of our Sunday school. We bring all that. We bring information. We have a worship service that all of our worship services are geared to be safe and welcoming, but we also have one that's a little bit smaller that sometimes is a good foot in the door for families. And so we make sure we have all that information there. But we do a lot of tabling. So we table at disability expos. We actually hosted the first one in Gainesville several years ago that now's gotten so big we can't host it anymore. It doesn't fit in
Oh,
our
wow.
space. Yeah, but we were at, for example, people might be familiar with Night to Shine, right? So that Tim
Yes. Mhm.
Tebow, the prom, we're there. We are there hosting a sensory room for the patrons who might need a break from the prom, and they come in with us. When the Center for Autism does their fundraisers, we're there. We have a table there. So we try to look for tabling events that are automatically going to put us there. And it's remarkable when people walk by us and go, "Oh, you're a church." Yeah, we're a church. And you're here. Yes, we are, because we care about this community. So we just did something with sickle cell. We were at a sickle cell event a couple of weeks ago. So I would say, think about it's that, how do we go to versus expecting everyone to come to us? Like, how do we show a community that we're interested? So, if you are interested in working with people with dementia, then I say find the local Alzheimer's and dementia units and start figuring out how you can volunteer there, how you can table at events, how you can maybe, if they have a newsletter, include an article in their newsletters that go out to their followers, the members of their group.
Yeah.
These things exist already, Dan. So the idea is, again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Uh, these communities are already there. These support groups are already there. The doctors' offices are already there. The lawyers that work with disability law are already there. And so it's just a matter of letting them know, hey, so now what happens is all these places have my business cards. And so when someone goes to CARD because their child has just been diagnosed with autism and they are looking for a church, CARD says, here's a church we know we can send you to that's going to be safe and loving.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of connecting with all the groups that are already serving these communities out in the community, and letting them know, as a pastor, as a church member, that your faith community is intentionally looking to build bridges, and it just kind of happens that way.
That's so great. I mean, because so often, I'll speak for myself, but I would imagine a good bit of our audience who does this church communications work, we really only think of making videos that we hope will, be seen by hundreds, if not thousands, of people online, and we lament the algorithm and how much competition there is, and people are watching these things while they're standing in line, so they don't even turn the sound on. Like, you forget that there are real live places to go meet real live people.
Hmm.
There are public spaces where the church is not present, and
Hmm.
just making the effort to be there can so far eclipse what we pour
Hmm.
hours into to post, and then shows up and disappears in a week. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Hmm.
well, we like to end each episode with having our guests offer a word of encouragement, and it can be related to what we've talked about, or it could just be in general. Our audience is a mixture of staff people, of volunteers, of pastors who are the pastor and also the communications person and also the janitor and also the accountant. These people who are doing the day in and day out work of trying to connect and tell the story of their church. What words of encouragement might you have for these folks?
Well, first, as a parent, I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for even being open to the conversation. That's a great starting point. And I want to encourage people that small things are huge. Small things are huge. And so um, anything that you can do that can let a family know that it's okay, that they're okay, that their loved one is okay, that they are welcome, that you are committed to do no harm, and to love unconditionally. This is a gift, especially I would say in this world where, again, it's exhausting. One thing that we know about families that have family members with disabilities is it's isolating, and there is a high level of loneliness, um, because the world gets so hard that you just stay home.
Yeah.
Uh, and so anything that opens a door and says, it's okay, you can come in and we're going to care for you, is I cannot say enough what a gift that is. I cannot say enough. Anything that can offer just a little bit of breathing room for these families is such a gift. And I can't, again, nothing is too small. Nothing is too small. Even something as simple as, we're going to provide this respite, and here's a $10 gift card. $10 might not seem like a lot, but when your medical bills are in the hundreds of thousands, if not more,
Yeah.
you're not going to Starbucks to get a coffee. That's not
Right.
happening. And so something that you can do as simple as that is such a gift. When we started our respites, for example, we had couples tell us that they had not been out in 9, 10, 11 years.
Mm.
They had not gone out on a date since their child had been born. They had not left their children with anybody, because our respite has nurses there and what have you. So they can't leave them with grandparents or aunts and uncles. You can't hire a 13-year-old babysitter to come and take care of your medically complex kiddo. So to do anything that helps someone feel seen and heard is such a gift. And I just want to encourage the listeners to, it doesn't have to be the big expensive playground. It can just be something as simple as a fidget, a gift card, a gift, or a sensory blanket that the folks in your congregation can make, and it makes all the difference. It just says, I love you, and I see you, I hear you, and I have prepared a place for you.
Thank you, Melissa. This has been one of the more impactful interviews I've had the chance to do. If folks want to learn more about Celebration UMC, if they'd like to see your website, your social media, maybe even tune into a worship service to see how you all uniquely express this type of ministry, how can they do that?
Celebration GNV, like Gainesville.org. And if you'd like, I would be more than happy to chat, email, and phone call after that. But Celebration UMC at gmail.com will get you directly to me. And I would be happy to have a conversation with anyone who would like to, talk some more about this.
Thank you so much, Melissa. We so appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
And now, listeners, we want to hear from you. Has your church taken any intentional steps to make your ministry accessible or inclusive for those with disabilities? Has this led to any new connections within your community? Email us at podcast@umcom.org, and we just might share your thoughts or stories on a future episode. And you can, of course, use that email, podcast@umcom.org, to send us any feedback or topic suggestions you have for the show. We always love hearing from you. And as always, the easiest way to support this show and to help other church communicators like yourself find it is by sharing this episode with your friends and colleagues, or by leaving a review on whatever service you're listening to us on right now. And did you know that United Methodist Communications has celebrated over 80 years of ministry? Your support ensures that the latest denominational news, dynamic stories, and informative articles will continue to connect our global community. Make a tax-deductible donation today at resourceumc.org/giveumcom. Thanks again for listening to the MyCom Church Marketing Podcast.